So as I mentioned earlier, when mice can eat around the clock, bad things happen. And one of the bad things that happens is that the liver suffers. The liver is involved in all sorts of things, production of important hormones and other factors related to metabolism. And when mice can eat around the clock, their livers got very sick. Fatty deposits in the liver, other factors in the liver, essentially taking down the pathway of liver disease. The time-restricted feeding essentially reversed that, or led in many cases to even healthier liver conditions. And that's based on this study, but also additional studies also now in humans. So restricting your feeding to a particular window every 24-hour cycle has clearly been shown now in mice and in humans to enhance liver health, which is wonderful. How does it do this? Well, it happens because food intake, as I mentioned earlier, sets certain conditions in the body that last for a period of time. Anytime we eat, whether or not we are a mouse or a human, there's a period of time that's required for so-called digestion, but also gastric emptying and other processes related to breaking down that food and utilizing it. And that is an active process. It requires energy. And that process of breaking down food involves certain cellular functions that, if they're ongoing throughout the 24-hour cycle or even extended too far across the 24-hour cycle, meaning you're eating across a 14 or a 16-hour or an 18-hour window, that causes serious problems. And this has now been established because of the fact that it increases the expression of different proteins and genes in the body, such as TNF-alpha, IL-6, IL-1. What are all those things? They are pro-inflammatory markers. So the reason that the liver gets sick when you're eating too often is because inflammatory markers are increased. These inflammatory markers are not inherently bad. They're there for a reason, but they are there in order to respond to certain challenges, immune challenges, or the ingestion of food and the breakdown of food. But then in an ideal circumstance, they are reduced in the period in which there's no food present in the digestive tract, or in which there's very little food present in the digestive tract. So by eating around the clock, you're making yourself sicker. By eating at restricted periods of time each 24-hour day, you're actually making yourself healthier, and you are activating certain processes that can positively impact both weight, either maintenance or loss of weight. We'll talk about weight gain a little later, and positively impacting things like liver health. Also, the expression of different things related to brown fat, the fat that increases your metabolism. We will return to this also a little bit later, and blood glucose regulation. So the takeaway from this study, in fact, there are many takeaways from this study, it's so wonderful, is that liver health, bile acid metabolism, energy expenditure, inflammation, liver metabolites, many, many aspects of our health are impacted by when we eat, not just what we eat. As we move forward and we talk about intermittent fasting for 8-hour windows, 6-hour windows, 12-hour windows, for all sorts of different intents and purposes, I want to start to establish a foundational protocol that all of us, any of us, can use in order to maximize your particular goals. There are some absolutes within this realm of time-restricted feeding. Here are a couple of absolutes that you would want to consider. First of all, it pays off in the metabolic sense and in the health sense and in the weight maintenance or loss sense to not ingest any food in the first hour after waking, and potentially for longer. So I want to repeat that. One of the key pillars of intermittent fasting is that for the first hour after you wake up, and potentially for longer, to not ingest any food. Okay? The second major pillar that's well supported by research is that for the 2 and ideally 3 hours prior to bedtime, you also don't ingest any food or liquid calories for that matter. And we will talk about what it means to break a fast and whether or not certain liquids, even coffee and tea, can break a fast, et cetera, in a few moments. But just as a foundation, it's very clear from the research in humans that not eating any food or ingesting any calories, liquid or otherwise, for the first 60 minutes after waking up each day, and for the 2 to 3 hours prior to your bedtime, that's ideal for the parameters that we've discussed earlier, all the different things like weight and liver health and metabolic health and so forth.